Thank you very much, everybody, and thanks for coming here today. What a great venue this is. We work in Fenchurch Street in the Walkie Talkie building. I don't know if any of you know about the Walkie Talkie building, but when it was first built, it used to melt cars. I always used to say I wanted to work in a building with a death ray. So that's our claim to fame. Maybe one day you'll come and visit us. It'll be really good to see you all. So a little bit about me. I thought might as well go into a little bit about CGI as well, because we're the biggest, best kept secret IT consultancy in the world, I think, globally. Anyone want to take a guess how big we are? Who doesn't know? Anyone want to take a guess globally? How many people do you think we are? Anyone? Yes, over there. So many? 60,000. That's a good first guess. Anyone else? Anyone? Okay. So we're 90,000 people globally. So like I say, we're an IT consultancy that no one's ever heard of. The CGI doesn't stand for computer graphics. If anyone thought that, you're wrong. It stands for Consultants to Government and Industry. And it's in French. And the reason why it's in French is because we're a Canadian-based IT consultancy. Okay, so a little bit about me. In the UK, what we call our SBU, so Strategic Business Unit, is about 6,000 people. I'm one of the directors, consulting services. What does that mean, right? So I come from a software development background. I've been developing software for more years than I care to admit, and we'll go into that a little bit more because of this talk that I'm doing today, which is about the workforce going in the future. But I kind of sold out 2 years ago, and I've moved into account management, or in CGI parlance, what they call like a director consulting services, but it's almost like I'm running my own little company within the wider CGI. Most of the work I do is in central government at the moment, but we do IT consultancy across the wider UK sector. If you can think of an industry, we're probably in it, probably doing something about it. What we do on a day-to-day basis touches the lives of every single citizen in the UK, especially in the stuff that we do in government. We do things from infrastructure all the way through to government web portal, web pages. So if you ever use the gov.uk websites to do anything, there's a high probability that some of that code was written by some of our developers. Okay, so like I said, I'm from a software development background, additionally from a retail background, got involved in big data analytics, fraud detection applications and those kinds of things. And then, like I said, sold out 2 years ago and became an account manager for MD. And my team at the moment looks after the jury services applications, which is basically, if you've ever been called up for jury service, it's our fault. Right. Yeah, so we look after the sort of the random selection of jurors from the electoral roll through to the sending out of the letters, receiving the responses, the orchestration of the jurors in the courtroom when you get put onto jury service. And in a random fact, my wife was called up for jury services a couple of weeks ago. It wasn't my fault. And she starts on Monday. But she still thinks that I was the one that selected her for that, but it's completely random, I promise. Okay, when I'm not at work, I'm most happy taking pictures of wild animals. Someone once asked me if I prefer a beach or a city break, and I prefer a bush break, which is something that you don't get asked in the UK that much. But that photograph was taken in a place called Mbiti in Umzolozolo Game Reserve in about a couple of months ago in May. So yeah, that's what I like to do in my spare time. Okay, so what I thought I'd do today is talk about sort of my background in IT and software engineering and things like that. And I can see you all look at me like, why the hell is he talking about the past when we're supposed to be talking about the future? And when I first started thinking about this talk, I thought to myself, well, what was my experience like when I started my career, right? Like what things happened to me that are maybe happening today, right? Because I see a lot of similarities between the things that happened in the past and the things that are going to happen in the future. Now, feel free to ask me questions about that at the end and tell me that I'm completely wrong. But I'll go through what my experience was, and then I'll talk a little bit about what I think is going to happen in the future, and also talk a little bit about where we are today. Please excuse me. I'm going to use some notes. Sometimes the thoughts just go straight on my head. So I'm going to need some kind of prompts. Okay, good. So like I said, today I'm talking about the future of the workforce. what I thought would be good was to talk a little bit about my experience to date and use that to predict where we will be as a workforce in the future. I see quite a few similarities between what's going on today as when I started way back in the 90s, right? So in the 90s, for those of you who don't know, see some people in this room are old enough to remember that, so that's a good thing. It was a pivotal era of information technology, right? Just like it is today. It's a pivotal time, and I'll draw the similarities between it as we go forward. It was a time of rapid innovation. It was a time of advancements that laid the foundations for where we are today in the digital age. To set the scene, it was a time where very few households had a PC, right? Hardly anyone had a PC at home. My very first computer was a ZX, what was it? I remember now, ZX. It had 1K of memory and 3K of ROM, just for example. But at that time, when I first started working in the retail industry, I was able to take home a dumb terminal, an NCR 7901, and a modem, and I could dial into work and do work from home in 1992. And what are we doing today? We're all working remotely, right? So there's a big similarity between then and now. Look, it was slow. The modem was like 2400 baud, 2400 bits per second. It used to take 2 seconds for the A to come back when you press the key on the left. Just had to be a bit patient, but I could work from home, right? We then witnessed in the 90s was this explosion of the internet, right? The internet exploded sort of in my world in South Africa. It was in 1995, probably a little bit sooner in the UK and whatnot. The creation of the web by Sir Tim Berners-Lee in 1989, and the subsequent release of web browsers such as Mosaic and Netscape. Who remembers Netscape? Navigator revolutionized how people accessed and shared information. The internet opened up new avenues for communication, commerce, and collaboration, starting the digital economic as we know it today, right? E-commerce emerged as a game changer in the 1990s. Online marketplaces such as Amazon, eBay gained prominence. I remember there was a social experiment from someone who's seeing if they could live online from home in the 1990s, and was considered like a massive thing. Now, today, I mean, you never have to leave your house if you don't want to, right? The convenience and accessibility of e-commerce transformed the retail industry and laid the groundwork for the future of online shopping. There was a period of exuberant growth and speculation in the technology sector, now known as the dot-com bubble. Who remembers that? Internet-based startups experienced rapid innovation and rapid expansion, attracting substantial investments. If you registered a .com domain, you're guaranteed to be a millionaire overnight, but it was all in shares. However, many of these companies were overvalued. And when 2000 came around, the kind of collapse of numerous companies, despite this bubble's eventual burst, it served as a valuable lesson and experience for the IT industry, highlighting the importance of sound business strategies and substantial growth. All right, mobile phone technology also became a big thing in the 90s. And standards, introductions to digital networks such as GSM, global systems, mobile communications enabled clearer voice quality and the ability to send text messages. Additionally, and here's an interesting story, in South Africa, for the first 5 years of mobile, no one sent a text message. No one. In 1998, they made it free to send text messages to anybody for 2 years. And then on midnight of 2000, they started charging for text messages. And the whole country completely had changed by then. No one made phone calls anymore. Everyone just sent text messages. So it's quick how quickly sort of technology was adopted by the general public and then became part of their everyday lives was absolutely unbelievable. And I see some of that with some of the AI technologies that we have today. The emergence of several foundational internet technologies. Who remembers HTTP and HTML when they were first defined as a standard? And JavaScript, forming the backbone of the web, enabling the creation of dynamic websites and interactive web applications. AI web experience we enjoy today are built, all web experiences we built today are built on top of some version, newer for sure, of HTTP and HTML and JavaScript. The faster development of processors and improved graphics capabilities led to the rise of multimedia applications such as video editing software, computer-aided design tools, gaming. Additionally, the emergence of digital music formats such as MP3s revolutionized the music industry and enabled the widespread sharing and distribution of music online. Who remembers Napster? The concept of owning music started to become an outdated idea. Although people today still do collect records, most music people rent music, right? Who here has a Spotify account? I remember attending a talk by a financial person back in the early 2000s, where he postulated that owning things would start to diminish, that we would become a service-based culture. And you can see that now. We don't buy movies anymore. We don't buy cars anymore. A lot of people lease cars. They don't own them. I mean, there's a facility to own them, but most people lease them, and after the 5-year period, they go ahead and lease another car. So we've moved into a more service-based industry than we used to be. More people today are renting than ever before. That may be a sign of economic times rather than anything else. The ways of working in the 90s were very much rooted in sequential ways of thinking. When I first started my job, my very first job, I didn't have a job title. I didn't know what a project manager was. Didn't have a project manager. How we used to get work was there was a person that used to come into our office every day and say, this is what you're doing today. And after 3 months of working, I remember turning to the person next to me and say, who's that person? Well, he's your boss. What's his job title? No idea. So we didn't have version control. In software engineering, we didn't have version control. We used to make a change to a program, send it down to the customer. You wrote good code, guarantee you that now. Anyway, we were rooted in, so in circa 2000, sort of agile ways of working. I think it was 2001, the Agile Manifesto became a thing. And then out of that sprung sort of agile methodologies such as, Scrum. Well, Scrum came before, but let's not harp on that. But agile methodologies like scaled agile and those kinds of things became a big thing in the 2000s. We also saw the advancement of rational application or rapid application development and those kinds of things that came out of IBM. So circa 2000, object orientation programming gained significant popularity, and it focused on structured software around objects and encapsulated data and behavior. Languages like C++ and Java emerged as prominent choices for building object-oriented software systems. The use of object-oriented OOP facilitated code reusability, modular design, and better organization of complex software projects. Integrated development, IDEs. The first time I used an IDE, I thought I was on a different planet. I grew up using VI. Anyone remember VI or VI improved now? VIM? Yeah. So back in those days, the cursors never, the keyboards never used to have cursor keys. So you had to navigate around using HJ, K, and L. Yeah. Anyway, so anyway, Microsoft Studios became a thing. IBM Visual Age, Eclipse, all the modern IDEs that we see today. Visual Studio is still around, and as much as I have never used it, I got an opportunity to play around with Azure DevOps and Visual Studio a couple of years ago, and that integration is absolutely unbelievable. I've spoken about the version control stuff. Software development, software documentation began to play a crucial role. Given the sequential nature of developing practices, detailed and extensive documentation such as requirements, documentation, design specifications, user manuals were commonly created to ensure clarity and traceability throughout the development process. And it's important to understand that this was a bolt-on after the fact, right? So today we're sitting in a situation where we have systems that are 15, 20 years old. No one knows how they work. They work, but no one knows how they do. And the documentation is 15, 20 years old, what documentation there is. And I'll hopefully come back to that point in a minute. It's important to note that software development practices during the 1990s were influenced by prevailing technologies and methodologies at that time. The rapid advancements in technology and subsequent decades leading to more agile and collaborative approaches to software development. Okay, so now why am I talking about this? I've touched on a few of the notable technologies of the time. I started out as a COBOL developer by 2000, and by the end, I was a full stack developer. while I had a specialism in Java, I felt confident that I could work across the technology estate from hardware installations through to front-end development, okay? So the job that I started doing to the job that I was doing by 2000 bore some resemblance. I was working in the same industry, in the retail industry, but my skill set was almost completely different. And I think the same is true today. The job you start with today or the job you get tomorrow will not be the same job they will be doing in 5 years' time. And if it is, you should be wary about where it's going. We are in an environment, especially in our industry, of continual learning, and you should be looking to continually learn. Now, that's oftentimes easier said than done, right? Because you're on a project, your customer is paying you to do a specific job. Their technology estate is outdated, it's 5, 10 years old. It does exactly what they want it to do. They've got no incentive to upgrade it, no incentive to change anything. Every single time someone comes to them with a different kind of proposal or an outcome or a different COTS product, let's say, they'll say, well, can it do what my current system does? No. Well, then why do I want to change it? Yeah. I looked this morning online, just as out of interest, is how many COBOL jobs are being advertised on a rather large UK job website. COBOL. Anyone want to hazard a guess how many COBOL jobs there are as of today being advertised? Nah, not that many. A good guess though, it was 19 jobs. So if you're a COBOL developer, you can find work today. Yeah, that hasn't gone away. And one would expect that at some point in the future that does go away. But people have been saying it's going to go away for maybe 20 years now. I know when I first started, people were saying that COBOL was outdated in the 1990s. How much Java code or how much more Java code do you think is out there today? Or C# or Python and those kinds of things. If someone's telling you today that those things are going to go away, they're wrong. They're going to be around for the next 15, 20, 30 years, I think. And they're going to need people to be able to look after them and update them and continue to monitor them. So it's important to understand that while the skill sets change and the mindsets change and maybe the paradigms and the patterns change, the actual underlying technology is still going to be around for a long time. Okay, so since 2000, software engineering continued to evolve with a greater emphasis on specialized roles and practices. And this, I think, probably my most controversial point is where we went wrong in terms of software engineering. We saw a significant shift towards agile methodologies with emphasis on flexibility, collaboration, iterative development, agile approaches such as Scrum and extreme programming, promoted cross-functional teams, shorter development cycles, sprints, and continuous delivery, enabling faster response times and changing requirements. As software development became more complex and diverse, we specialized in roles that became to prominence. So in the 2000s, we saw the advent of the software architect. Software architects focused on high design sessions, system architecture, and ensuring alignment of software solutions with business goals. They played a critical role in defining the structure and components of a software system. Quality assurance engineer, QAs. QA engineers were responsible for testing and ensuring quality of software products. They developed test plans, performance testing activities, and helped identify and resolve defects. User experience, UX. Designers focus on creative, intuitive, and user-friendly interfaces by conducting user research, prototyping, usability testing. They work closely with developers and translated user needs into effective designs. We've seen the rise of specialist technologies and platforms that allowed software engineers to cater to specific domains and industries. So, we've got web development, we've got mobile development, and then also the need for large-scale integrated software systems in organizations gave rise to specialized enterprise software development, engineers focusing on technologies like Java, Enterprise Edition, .NET frameworks, middleware platforms to build scale and robust enterprise solutions. So now why do I say that this is where we went wrong? In the 2000s, it became apparent to me and to a lot of people that we were working with that it was like, well, I'm a software engineer, I'm a back-end software engineer, my stuff works on my machine, then we hand it off to QA. QA tests it, doesn't work. comes back to me. It's like, well, no, it's a problem with the data. So it's the database architect's problem, or the database analyst's problem. Well, it's not doing what the spec says it's supposed to do. Well, the spec's wrong. So there became this sort of, in the 2000s, what I believe was like a blame culture, where we were supposed to be working collaboratively together in teams that were doing multifunctional things, but everyone had their specialism. And if it was outside their specialism, then it wasn't their problem. I mean, and it is daunting, right? It is daunting in the software engineering world or the IT world to know all the things. I mean, it's almost impossible. So from 2000 to 2010, me personally, I was like getting quite deluded with the software world. Development was difficult. We had complex problems. We had legacy applications. We had lots of stuff that we had to look after because it had been around for a long time. I mean, I was looking after a retail application at the time. It was a fuel sale system. So I think sort of BP forecourts, in the stores as well. So point of sale, fuel integration systems and all that kind of stuff. And that was a 24/7 operation. They had 600 stores in South Africa. And I used to spend the majority of my time on weekends and at night clearing down space in those remote systems because they kept running out of space because the hard drives weren't big enough, right? Because they were doing so many transactions. And there was literally nothing I felt like I could do about it. I mean, I could write an automated script that would delete some data. Maybe that would work, but then some of the data was critical, so you couldn't delete it. And whenever I spoke to someone like the architect and whatever, it was like, well, that's just the way it is. You just have to deal with it. So yeah, I was becoming very disillusioned with the world of IT. So what happened? DevOps culture started. Obviously, some people way more intelligent than me decided that this operational side of things and the development side of things needed to come together, hence the term DevOps. So what we've seen, I think, over the last sort of 10 years, 13 years now, is that sort of that actual coming together of collaboration, looking at things like automation, looking at things like making sure we're creating T-shaped individuals, right? So have your specialism, back-end developer, front-end developer, whatever the case may be, but have an idea of the surrounding technologies and patterns that you need to have in order to make yourself as big a part of the team as possible. So currently my team, I've got 22 odd developers. Part of that is the service side of things. Part of that is looking after the existing systems. And part of that is looking after modernizations. And I encourage them, and they are encouraged to go across jobs as often as possible, as frequently as possible, so that they can get a better understanding of the entire system. I've often said that the problem with software engineering is that we often look at everything like it's a technical problem, when 90% of the time it's a business problem or a people problem. And we need to focus on that side of things rather than on the technology. I mean, obviously pick the right technology for the right thing, but if you start forgetting about the people or the business, chances are you're not doing the right thing. Okay, where are we? So yeah, the advent of build tools and continuous integration and continuous deployment practices, tools like Jenkins, TeamCity, Travis CI, enabled automated build testing, deployment pipelines. These practices aim to ensure the frequent integration of code changes, early defect detection, and rapid delivery of software updates. Rise of collaboration development platforms and version control systems such as Git and Subversion, SVN. The platforms enabled distributed development, better code collaboration, version control, software, open source communities, also game member, just where would we be without GitHub? Allowing developers worldwide to collaborate on shared projects and contribute to open source software. Continuing to 2010, the realization that most software projects still took longer than expected. There were complexities with legacy applications and the amount of intellectual property that was in them. And as everyone had become so specialized, even though there was lots of tooling collaboration, it was all at an all-time low. The phrase "works on my machine" was the mantra of the day. Okay, so now on to the future. How we got there in the end, right? We've been talking about the past a lot. Let's talk about what I think the future holds. So a couple of disclaimers on this. We have a workforce in my part of the business that looks at the future workforce, so who we should be hiring today so that we can satisfy our customers in the future. There's some things that have come out of that, but these thoughts that I'm going to talk about now are mine and mine alone, right? So don't blame CGI for anything that I say that's too controversial. So hopefully you'll hear now some similarities between my experience and what you may experience as we navigate forward, right? As I've stated, the IT industry has witnessed remarkable growth and has become an integral part of our global economy. From the advent of computers to the rise of the internet, we have witnessed a series of disruptive innovations that have revolutionized the way that we live and work. However, these advancements are only the tip of the iceberg when it comes to what lies ahead. Let's start with the big one, right? Automation and artificial intelligence. One of the most prominent shifts we're witnessing is the rise of automation and AI technologies. As machines become increasingly capable of performing routine and repetitive tasks, certain jobs will undergo increased significant changes. While this may lead to displacement of certain roles, it also creates new opportunities for individuals to upskill and focus on more complex and creative aspects of their work. AI in software engineering roles will help developers focus on solving business problems rather than to worry about trivial bugs and code formatting. Not sure if anyone's used things like GitHub's Copilot. It can be viewed as a paired programming tool. It's really, really good. I used a ChatGPT to help me out with a programming problem in December of last year. I don't know if there are any developers in the room, but does anyone know about Advent of Code? Anyone heard of Advent of Code? Cool. So Advent of Code is a hacking challenge that happens between the 1st of December and the 24th of December. New coding challenge every single day. And it's quite cool. They start off quite easy and get quite hard by the second day. Most people can do it up till the 15th or so. And then from the 15th onward, you kind of need to have a bit of a math brain. But I was trying to teach myself Go for some unknown reason. And I had a hash map and I was trying to sort it on the values, not the keys. And I couldn't. So I went into ChatGPT and I said, please, can you sort this? Show me how to sort this hash map by the values and not the keys. And literally wrote the program for me. Copy and pasted it into my program, ran it, worked first time. So those are the kinds of things that, you know, developers would have struggled with in the past, they can actually do in like 5 minutes now. But where I think ChatGPT or most AI will fall down is if you go to a business and you say, how does this process work? Let's call it a procurement. How do you procure a can of Coke if you're a retailer from Coca-Cola? And how does that get to be sold in your store? And if you went and asked Tesco's, Sainsbury's, I know Aldi, Asda, each one of those will have a different process. Okay, fine, you can map those processes out, no problem. When you go and look at the actual process that the humans undertake, how closely will that process match the actual business process that they're talking about? Humans find shortcuts. They do things that, you know, that you wouldn't expect them to do. They might even make the process longer than it's supposed to be. So there's a discrepancy between business process and what I like to call organic process. And I don't see AI being able to solve that problem now or in the not too distant future. I mean, you know, AI is at its worst point now that will ever be. It's only going to get better. But I still think the nuances of the human condition are going to be very challenging for AI to solve. I think that's where we come in. And I think that's where, you know, the problem, the business problem or the people problem that we're trying to solve won't be solved by AI. It's also important to remember that AI data sets are based on existing human data sets, and they don't necessarily innovate or invent anything. You know, all that ChatGPT is at the end of the day is a word prediction tool. It's basically doing an analysis on the previous words and by probability suggesting what the next best word will be. And that's based on data sets that exist today. Well, data sets that exist for up till 2021 if you haven't got the professional edition. I also see using AI as becoming almost a role in and of itself. You know, you can You can go online and you can see people using AI in ways that I would never have imagined. And I can imagine that some people will get a lot more out of ChatGPT and those kinds of things than maybe somebody else. You know, machine learning, data analysis, all those kinds of things. The innovation still sits within the human, I believe. Augmented reality and virtual reality. AR and VR technologies have gained immense traction in recent years, and they're poised to transform various industries. In my opinion, personally, and I know CGI has a massive investment in the metaverse, not necessarily Meta, but we've done quite a lot in the metaverse around sort of virtual realities, especially with our sort of drive to carbon zero and all that kind of stuff. But I don't think that virtual reality in and of itself is going to be as big as maybe people think it's going to be. And I'm probably on record for saying this, and I'm probably wrong. I see it as like 3D TV and 3D movies, where it's a big punt from the technologists in the world. But we still haven't managed to get over the uncanny valley. Anyone know what that is? It's like the people sort of disconnect from virtual reality after 45 minutes because it becomes too disconcerting. You know, that it becomes uncomfortable for people to use. What I do think will become quite big is augmented reality, right? So you can still see everything around you, but it'll be enhanced by, you know, digital stuff around you, especially in things like doing operations and things like that. Don't get me wrong, I think there is scope for VR. I just don't know if it's going to be that big. Apple's going to prove me wrong in when does Apple release their VR thing? I think it's in a year or so. I mean, cost prohibitive, sure, but I think that's probably a step in the right direction. But even the people that have used it now have said that, you know, it's quite weighty. Although it's like easy to use, after an hour, you need to take a break. So I don't know. I just think that we're trying to maybe push open the door that doesn't need to be opened on that front. In an era of rapid technology advancements, skills will be the currency of the future. The half-life of skills is shrinking. I suppose that's the point I've been trying to make all along. And the ability to adapt and learn new technologies will be vital for success. Lifelong learning will become the norm as professionals continually upskill and reskill themselves to remain relevant. Organizations and educational institutions will play a crucial role in providing accessibility and continuous learning opportunities. As AI technologies become more sophisticated and embed in our daily lives, ethical considerations and responsible AI practices will become paramount. The IT workforce of the future will need to grapple with the complex ethical dilemmas, ensuring that AI systems are fair, unbiased, and unaccountable. And anyone who's looked at the data that we have now, it's definitely biased. If you ask an AI today, who should be the next CEO of my company, what are the odds that it's going to be a white Anglo-Saxon male? Probably 99.9%, right? That's wrong. It's fundamentally wrong. But the data tells them, or tells us, that those are the best people for those roles. Fundamentally wrong. In conclusion, the future of the IT workforce is both exciting and challenging. We're on the cusp of a technology revolution. I would argue that we're in a technology revolution, and we've been in a technology revolution for the last 20 years. And we'll redefine the way that we work and interact with technology. As AI automation, AR and VR become increasingly integrated into our professional lives, we'll prepare ourselves to adapt, upskill, and embrace. So the key message, I suppose, that I wanted to get across today is the technology is one thing, and technology will continue to change. But as long as you're in a position where you're continually learning and looking to learn, and it doesn't necessarily matter what, and it doesn't necessarily have to be about technology, I think we'll all be okay. There are certain roles that will go away, but I think the opportunity to, be invested and intuitive and learn is right in front of us. I mean, I was telling someone just now, for CGI, I've done over 100 interviews this year to bring people into CGI, and our business unit has just topped out at over 1,000 people in the last couple of weeks. And people have oftentimes asked me, what do I look for? And I tend not to ask questions around technology and sort of attitude in technology, especially with people that are new into the industry. But what I look for is an inquisitiveness and a willingness to learn. Sometimes I ask the question, when you were a kid, how many times did you take your PlayStation apart? Because I used to take my computers apart all the time, never got them back together again. But I've always had a willingness to learn, and not necessarily the technology, not about the technology, but about the actual process. So finding out, for example, when I first started retail, once again, I found out what stock levels there were and how to calculate stock levels and those kinds of things. And when I worked on fraud detection applications, like how do you detect patterns of fraud and all that sort of stuff. So my time's up. I know I was a bit all over the place. Feel free to ask me any questions. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed that.
Thank you so much, Doug. That was so interesting, so insightful. And I hope everybody gained a lot from that. Let's take a seat and we will do some questions.
Move on there.
If everybody wants to scan the QR code, it will take you to Slido, where you can input your questions, or if anybody's feeling brave, I'm sure we can do some in-person ones as well. I'd just like to kick off actually with one from me. I really enjoyed what you were saying about the difference, the kind of terrifying but exciting, emergence of this metaverse, AR versus VR. Is there something else maybe, or is that the most exciting thing you can see in sort of the tech future?
Yeah, there's way more. And I mean, I know I never touched on social media, and I did that on purpose because I talk about social media forever. I mean, I think and I suppose the ethics around the data and people's data is going to become very prevalent over the next 5 to 10 years. I think, my generation kind of not sold out, but when social media became a thing, we just dived online and put all our information on there. And I think in the later generations, my children who are in their 20s, early 20s and younger, are a little bit more circumspect about how much of their information that they put online. And I think it's going to be harder to try and get, I think, we gave that information away without any idea that it actually is worth something. The social media companies got all that data for free and they use it to drive sales and to do all sorts of things. And I think over time, over the next 5 to 10 years, people are going to realize, hang on a second, my data is actually worth something. You can't have it, and GDPR and those kinds of things will come into play. And the ethics of how people use data is going to become a big, big thing. There's legal cases all over the place at the moment, even with ChatGPT about where they got all their data from. So I see that as being a massive, massive thing.
Awesome. Thank you. And thank you so much. That's why I'm on my phone. I've got questions coming through on Slido already. So if we don't get to yours, do come up and ask at the end. Use the networking at the end of the day as well. So keep putting them in as well. Okay, let's go with this one, because you were talking about the remote and working from home even in the 90s, which is awesome. How is the rise in remote working impacting the workforce and businesses, in your opinion?
So there's two aspects to that. The one aspect is like for me, it's been fantastic, right? With lockdown happening and my wife also being able to work remotely, we didn't lose a job, and and we were established in our organizations, so we knew people. So from a networking perspective, that was great. And we continue to work remotely most of the time. Today, this is my second time coming into London this year, shockingly. But there's a happy medium there, right? So like if you're a recent graduate and you're still living at home and you start a job and it's working remotely, like your life experience is going to be sitting, waking up in the morning, pulling your laptop into your lap, not getting out of bed, working all day, closing it down. You don't have an office that you can go and work in and all those kinds of things. So it's a hybrid model, I believe, is probably the best way to go forward. And that's what we try to institute in CGI, where on a case-by-case basis, obviously we do work in government and there are some secure projects where people have to go into the office. But for us, we believe now that the workplace should be a place to network and meet rather than to actually work, and why I travel 2 hours every day to get into an office where you can do the same thing from home. Yeah. So I think hybrid working is here to stay, but I think events like these and events within organizations where you can meet and socialize and get to know people are of critical importance. And it's not just the team you work with, right? It's, like getting to meet someone from HR, or getting to meet someone from the finance place, or talking to people from different teams that might have insightful notes, like we're doing this and we're struggling with this problem. That sort of water cooler kind of behavior has gone away to a large degree. And I worry sometimes that working remotely, and my team's all over the UK, that people can get sort of lost and not spoken about in any way, shape or form. And you may not realize it. Whereas at work, you can actually physically see someone might be upset or might be, struggling a little bit or something like that, and it'll be easier to deal with. So it's a difficult problem. I think hybrid working is probably the way to go forward. So most of the time at home, but still have offices for people who want to go into work every day, want to socialize, especially for sort of people coming into the workforce, right at the beginning.
Fantastic. I would definitely agree with you. It's all about balance, right? At the end of the day.
Yeah, work-life balance. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, unfortunately, that is all we've got time for. I'm afraid. Yes. No, it was fantastic. Thank you very, very much. One more round of applause, please, everyone.
Thank you.
Doug.